Hey, hello everyone. Wow, never done one of these to so many people. I don't know why Lucy Powell's here because she knows all of this, but she can certainly jump in and help answer some questions as we go along. Because Lucy's a partner in crime, so to speak, and helped set up Flintshire DO-IT, which we're going to talk about. So say hi, Lucy.
Hi, everybody.
So yeah, I'm really pleased and thankful to the Eden Project, and Samantha, who's not here today, Samantha Evans, who works for the Eden Project. She made the introduction here to share some of the learning that I picked up over the last 34 years. I am that old. Started as a lad. And Samantha and I worked together for an organisation that supported disabled people to live a good life at the centre of their communities. And our job was to ensure that people were in charge of their own lives and that the organisation was driven by what was important to those people. We also, while we were doing that, just to make the link back to the Eden Project, we started facilitating big lunches. I had many successful big lunches in the centre of Mid Wales in a town called Llandrindod, Wales, which I think that still goes on today with Sam's support. So we combined good person-centered practice with community development principles. So some of this might feel a little bit like teaching you to suck eggs, but I'm hoping you're going to be able to learn some new things and put it in a context of some real stuff. So it's getting, as we know, getting beyond theory to practice. So that's what we're going to try and bring together, and to get you chatting about some of that. But I'm just going to read out a quote from a postcard that do not try to satisfy your vanity by teaching a great many things. Awaken people's curiosity. It's enough to open minds, do not overload them. Put there just a spark. If there's some good inflammable stuff, it will catch fire. And I really like that quote. We're hoping that there's going to be some stuff that catches fire for you today that you can apply in your work or in your community or in your own life. I'm going to screen share. I've only got several slides, but just to help stuff I'm talking about. Let's see if this works. So have we got that, folks? Is that viewable?
That's good for me. I forgot to say, if anybody wants, you can have speaker view or gallery view if you want to just see Mark or whoever's speaking at the time.
Okay, so
yeah, that was good.
Just to introduce myself and to sort of begin introducing some of the concepts. This is something called a one-page profile. I'm guessing some of you might have come across this, but this is an introduction to me through my one-page profile, and it's, as it says on the box, it's one-page introduction to me, and it helps me to share my knowledge, my interests, my experiences, what's important to me, what people say about me, and top tips on working with me. And I've done it in an individual style that I think reflects me. I like music. I like to get up and sing and try and play guitar. It's one of my passions, so that's why it's done in that kind of way. And but these are tools that we use on an everyday basis within the work that we do, and it might be an approach you want to consider using and building your inclusive communities, because if everyone in your community has a chance to share what's important to them, we're immediately building a sense of equality and inclusion, and we're trying to do this as in an accessible way as possible. And if we begin to share that in our communities and our organizations, we begin to build immediately a huge map of assets that we all have. So for example, when we were organizing a big lunch back in the day, because everybody in our organization had done one of these, we wanted some music, and I knew that one of our support workers, Gareth, was a musician, so I asked him if his band might play. So if we introduce this kind of concept, we're immediately opening up opportunities in terms of inclusion. So if you want to find out more about one-page profiles, You can Google Helen Sanderson Associates, and there should be information there, but we'll share the link with you. But what we're going to try and do is just talk through our story in terms of applying this way of building community. So back in 2014, a small group of us came together in an attempt to build more inclusive, friendly and productive communities in North Wales. Lucy Powell was one of the first people around the table. We started really small. I think there were 4 or 5 of us, and we just started this co-productive, asset-based conversation. And we decided to name it Do-IT because we wanted to get on and do, because we spend too much time talking. So the culture is Do-IT, but it also stands for developing opportunities and interests together. So the idea is to create a cross-community network. So one of the first the concepts I want to introduce to you is something called the keys to inclusion. So this is something that I think myself and Lucy now naturally use to make sure we set up situations in the right way. So even if we're running a Zoom session like this, we might use this to get people thinking. So I came across the keys to inclusion. You notice I'm a bit of a magpie. I find stuff, I borrow it, I adapt it, and I use it in my context. So I came across the keys to inclusion many years ago. There's an organisation in Nottingham called Inclusive Solutions. We've been using this for many years, and they were inspired by some folk in Canada. We've got a website called inclusion.com. Jack Pearpoint and Marsha Forrest and Judith Snow, who've created a movement that's many, many years old now, where they used this approach. So I'm going to quickly just talk through the keys, and then we're going to get you thinking about how you can apply the keys in your own communities, or how you might already be doing some of this, which I'm sure you will be. So a really important aspect, obviously, is to create a welcoming environment. Too many meetings and get-togethers are over formal, and therefore we immediately disabling the process in terms of inclusion. So our job is to think about the format, to make it as informal and as friendly and inclusive for everybody as far as we possibly can. So we may be creating, I don't really like the word ground rules, but we may be creating working conditions together to create that welcome. Some people use music. If we weren't sure virtually, we might use food and drink to create that hospitable atmosphere, hence why the big lunch works. Food and drink always helps. Secondly, it's about a positive attitude, recognizing that we've all got something to offer. See the glass as half full and not half empty. And we know that's an easy thing to say, but it's really important to recognize that everybody's got something to offer. The keys to inclusion, the criteria for this is breathing. And this is one of the quotes that I heard many years ago. So to be involved, you just need to be able to breathe, even if that's assisted breathing. This is for everybody. We don't leave people out. So we need to think about how we can include them. We need to think about possibilities. And again, remember that we so easily disable a lot of people or situations through our own attitudes. We're very good in Britain sometimes at having that kind of but attitude. We're very good at finding the barriers, the problems that are in the way. So we need to develop a possibilities mindset where we're looking at solutions, not problems. And that's not ignoring issues, but it's recognizing that there's always a way around a problem. And we're taking a long-term view. So a possibility focus. Fourthly, that we're building support together, that everybody in the room is supporting each other, and that we need to ask for and offer support as we go along. One of the principles of the keys to inclusion as well is that if you're going to try something new out, you need to think about the concept of never diving alone. You know, that's about divers never diving on their own in case something goes wrong. So the same principle applies. Try and pair up with people if you're going to try something new. And then finally, that we are, again, all learning together. Nobody can possibly know all of the answers. You all have experiences and ideas that need to be shared to help us to work our way through whatever it is we're dealing with. So people need to be encouraged to speak up and share their thoughts. So this may feel fairly simple, but for us it's fundamental, thinking about those keys to inclusion right at the beginning of any kind of activity that you're doing. So what we'd like you to do now is to be organised into, is it Zoom rooms you call them? Into groups of 4 people. And we want you to think about how these keys are applied to your community now or your organisation. How do you create welcome? And how do you create a culture that reflects positive attitudes, possibilities focus, and an environment that ensures shared learning and support? So to each take it in turns, bearing in mind you've only got 10 minutes to talk about how you maybe already do this or how you might consider doing things differently in the future. And then we'll have a bit of feedback. I was going to say 1 minute per group, but I think we might have too many groups, so we're going to have to, you may need to use the chat facility, but we'll have some feedback. So your job is to discuss what I've just described in the context of your organisation or your community and think about how you're applying it now or how you could apply it. So I'll stop the share now. Yeah, is that okay? And these guys will organise you into rooms to chat.
This is where Lucy does her magic. You should get a join button coming up in front of you, so you just click on that. Right, I think that's probably us. Pass back over to you, Mark.
Okay, so I'm not sure how we manage this with 70 odd people in the space, but it would be good. We got 10 minutes to just get some feedback from your groups to share a little bit of the conversation that you had about applying the keys to inclusion that you may be already. So any ideas to share or any thoughts about how you might do things differently. So I don't know whether people put their hands up either physically or through the reactions facility, but would anybody like to share? So we've got Lee Ellery's got a hand up, I can see there.
Sorry, my name's Liz. I don't know how it's come up as Lee. We were speaking and I know Katerina, she was saying how speaking to the actual carers themselves who are the parents was very empowering because it's coming from first hand and that's keeping them inclusive. But obviously now with COVID at the moment, it's been really difficult because with the people that they're looking after, it's not just mental health, it's physical health, and they have lost people. So it's not just how you actually converse with the people at the time, it's afterwards as well. If they've lost somebody, you become close to the family, and then it's trying to keep them inclusive as well. But as in welcoming and being as part, it's just basically saying who you are to everybody first of all in the beginning of each meeting and saying what you do. We tend to find in our groups that we say a positive has happened that week, and we will then say a negative, and if there's a negative that we all share, that's then what we'll try and work out. That's what we'll aim at then, is to try to find and figure out a way through that. I'll go off now.
Okay, that's really helpful. I'm just going to mention, when you mention problems, because as we said, we don't want to ignore the realities, but there's another tool out there that some people might have had a go at, which is a time-limited tool called the Solution Circle, which is a 20-minute timed exercise. I'm just mentioning it. I can't go into detail about it, but it's timed and it allows the presenter of the problem to speak uninterrupted. And then it allows for dialogue, then it allows for ideas, and then it allows a shared session where people agree on some action. But it's time limited because we know we can talk endlessly about stuff. So I'm just mentioning that, the solution circle. Again, if you Google it, you should be able to come across it. Are there any more feedback from any of the conversations? I can't. People know they can put their hand up through the reactions box as well. Okay. I don't know that my friend Lucy Powell is still there. I'm trying to flick through. Who's that?
I'm here, Mark.
Oh yeah, have you got any pearls of wisdom to offer, Lucy?
Well, we had a chat about language. My friend, and I'm trying to find you now. Where are you? My new friend Claire wasn't able to put. Well, this is quite interesting. So Claire, we were in a group of 3, and Claire wasn't able to talk. We couldn't hear her. And wasn't able to sort her tech out to try and figure out how we were going to do that. So that just raised a really interesting point there in itself. You know, if somebody can't hear or speak, how do you include those people as well? So Claire was really frustrated that she couldn't get her voice across. She tried to do some you know, writing on a piece of paper, and that wasn't going to work because it was backwards, you know. So it was really frustrating for Claire. So imagine being in that position. So how do we make sure that everybody, no matter what their level of ability or, you know, language, how do we make sure that everybody's included? And sometimes we have to go that extra mile to make sure that people are, you know. I was explaining about a group that we're organising at the moment, a group of youngsters, and it's all about hedgehogs. We're having a hedgehog rehabilitation site at our place. And I'm thinking, okay, so our group of youngsters, okay, we've got this small group of volunteers, but there's nobody with a learning disability or, you know, in that group. And I do a lot of work with folk with learning disabilities, you know, for many years. I'm thinking, why not? Why not? So finding a Makaton sign with hedgehog was my little task for this morning. Spoke to another friend of mine that speaks Makaton, asked him, you know, and he sent me the Makaton link of hedgehog, and so put it out there, you know, because there's got to be a child who wants to be involved in this group, who has got a passion for hedgehogs. And why is it that nobody's come forward? So I'm going now to purposely find somebody, not to be tokenistic, to have a person with learning disabilities in the hedgehog group, but just to offer that opportunity out there to say, come on, you can be involved in this, you know, it's cool. So yeah, that's my little.
Somebody's asked whether you can share the Makaton sign for hedgehog. Still on mute, Lucy. But you can Makaton sign it, so it doesn't matter.
Oh no, you put me on the spot. So it's something like hedgehog. Go on, I'm watching Jane. Come on, Jane, what is it? Go off mute, Jane.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
I think it was, I'm trying to think of the sim, it was your hand looked a bit like a hedgehog. 2 of them, and then you do like a pig nose.
That's all right, hedgehog.
Great. Any final comments before we move on, because time is just ticking? I mean, I think we know that this is all easier said than done. And I think, like Lucy's saying, to apply it, you've got to be creative, you've got to involve people, and you've got to work your way through frustrations. But where there's a will, there should be a way to include everybody. But don't beat yourself up if you're struggling a bit with it, but keep working towards it, that inclusive environment. Obviously, we're mega challenged at the moment with this world we're living in. Just getting people into meetings like this is impossible for some people, but nevertheless, I think we're learning new things through this challenging time about inclusion and different technology, aren't we? So we're learning a lot of lessons. So if there are no further comments, I'm going to go back to the screen share and add on some.
Just to say, Mark, there has been some interesting comments in the chat, so feel free to, for everybody, just for everyone else to have, you can have a look at those and keep them.
Okay, and we might be able to come back to some of those at the end as well. So
yeah,
see if I can.
Time reasons, let's carry on.
So another tool that some people may have heard of. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this other than reference it briefly. But in telling our story about Flintshire Do-IT, I think consciously and unconsciously we applied the keys to inclusion and this thing called positive and productive meetings, which again some people would have come across and maybe used. So there's you can Google it again, but there's I don't know whether this is still available, but there's a pack of postcards that I've got that is, I think, really handy in terms of guiding you through this process. So it's got a section on making sure that you are clear about the purpose of your meetings, because how many meetings and get-togethers do we end up in that, again, it's not really clear that we're involving everybody in agenda development rather than the chair coming up with the agenda. So there's a load of stuff around purpose and agenda. There's a whole section on the meeting process. So it's got that graphic you've got in front of you on a postcard to help remind you about how to do these things. And it talks through the process in simple terms. What positive and productive meetings does quite well, I think, is really encourage people to share roles. So we don't necessarily have the same chair, but we have lots of different roles, including facilitator. We might have a role specifically around hospitality. So in terms of that, setting the welcome up, you have somebody who's dealing with that. You have somebody who's dealing with the timekeeping. Somebody who might be dealing with the recording. So there's a whole pack of stuff just about the different roles that people could have. And then there's a whole set of resources within there about how to engage people. So one of the obvious ones that I think was mentioned earlier on was the opening round. So making sure at the beginning you have, to make sure everybody's included, that you do that opening round and a closing round at the end. So there's some resources in there about that. And it's very much a focus on outcomes. And I think when we got together in 2014 with our little gang, including Lucy, our friend Mark, and a few others we invited in, we immediately started using this, and our meetings were shaped by, well, why are we here? What are we trying to solve? What is the outcome that we want? We were really clear about the outcome and what items were for discussion and what items were just for information, and maybe having a burning issue sheet, because you can get stuck on those burning issues. So I think right away we were focused on outcomes, and that led us into creating those outcomes that happened actually quite quickly. But also in the organisation I work with Samantha in, or I referred to earlier, we applied this process right through the organisation. It's a supported living organisation. So every single meeting used this process, from the board of trustees to senior management team to project teams to individual team meetings, and even into individual supervisions or one-to-ones. Now that did take some doing to get people into a culture of genuinely sharing roles, sharing responsibility, giving everybody time to speak, being accessible. You know, you can imagine some people on the board of trustees didn't take to it immediately, so you had to spend a bit of time helping them to change. Essentially what we're doing is we're changing culture. We're working with, not doing to. And so we found positive and productive meetings to be a really helpful tool in terms of how we develop Flintshire Do-IT and in the organisation that I worked upon all those years ago. And just to give you a flavour of some of the things we've done within Flintshire Do-IT, as I said, we began in 2014. We applied this stuff, the keys to inclusion and the positive and productive meeting stuff, in the conversations that we were having. We tried to be as co-productive as possible. So that co-production is a whole set of principles that I'll come back to that align themselves with the keys to inclusion. And we also began using another approach that some of you will already be aware of and using, which is asset-based community development, often shortened to ABCD. I mean, all of these approaches have been around for years. It's just a case of discovering or rediscovering them and applying them. So we started these co-produced conversations. Because we used the keys, we were able to get a whole host of people in the room, including people who are typically seen as service users. They came alongside us, and we developed a rich conversation based on what's strong in our communities, what can we build upon, and what can we create together. We were very outcomes focused, as I said, and we were very positive and productive. And the Do-IT strapline reflects that. Let's be productive, let's do stuff together. So what we started doing is we started finding out what people were into, what they were interested about, what they were passionate about. And then we started mobilizing and uniting people around some of those individual interests. So initially, we were coming together around music and drama, which is a good engager. A lot of people love music and drama. We hired an arts organisation. They ran some tasters. That ended up creating 2 community bands. So all of our Do-IT projects have got an "it" on the end, so we've called that one Rocket. We've got 2 bands who perform publicly. We have a massive demand for music making, so we're always searching out facilitators, and it's just a great way of helping people belong to something. So we created that quite quickly. Some of us have dabbled in community cinema, so we piloted a project around that, which we call Watch It, and we partnered up with others in the community, including an arts and cinema organisation. We discovered that they had gear, mobile cinema gear, lying dormant, that's been used for one festival. They were interested in working with us because they knew they had to reach more people because they weren't getting enough people in their venue. So we partnered up and we ran a number of community cinema projects. My friend Lucy was really passionate about that because of a Glastonbury experience she'd had around watching cinema in a field. And that is still going in some shape or form today. We have a bunch of guys in their 80s who run a community cinema project in their Methodist church hall. They're self-sufficient. They've now got their own gear. We borrowed an idea called Gig Buddies, where you match people up with and without differences who like music and theatre to get out together. Managed to get a really small amount of money to get that going, and proved there was demand. That lay dormant for a while after the initial project, but it's now about to get funded by a Welsh Government programme in North Wales. And in all, based on people's passions, we had 12 projects, 12 themed projects. They included a coffee morning that we called Brew It, and that was set by a guy who found himself really poorly after a couple of strokes, a lot of rehabilitation, and he opened up his garden initially with the support of a creative social worker called Lucy, and then later on he saw a coffee, a community hall at the end of the row of bungalows. So why can't we create a coffee morning to bring people together like myself who've maybe got a bit lonely and isolated? We helped them set that up. They've been running for the last 2 or 3 years, and they've been operating on Zoom weekly right through the pandemic. So that's Brew It. We got a project around building circles of support around individuals to build our strong support network. We've got an eco-friendly project that Lucy is one of her passions, and that's now turned into an organisation called Outside Lives. She can tell you a little bit about that later. There's doing loads of amazing stuff in their communities. We support an advocacy project called Voice It. We use time credits, so we call that Credit It. So we credit our volunteers with time credits, the time banking philosophy. And we've now got a program of which this is part of in a way, because lots of people ask us to talk about this stuff. And so we've got a training and support arm that we call Inspire It. And myself, Lucy, and a gang of others. And those other people are people who maybe initially benefited, who are now alongside us as co-trainers and co-speakers. So that effort we put in to use the keys to inclusion has meant that those people are now partners and members of our core group and potential directors of our organisation, because we then turned ourselves into a cooperative, because we felt the cooperative model has got the equality and democracy built in. And so we're now an organisation that can, trade our services, if you like, but we don't go chasing the money. Any money we get, we try and put back in to seed fund new ideas based on the interests that people have got. So this is a whistle-stop tour, but 12 projects, all based on people's assets and strengths. So now we'd like you to, I just stopped the share. We'd like you to go into a Zoom room again to have another conversation about how are you, or how could you, identify and unite assets in your community? And what are some of the strengths and interests and passions that exist? I think the thing with asset-based community development is what it asks. It's not asking you to ignore the problems, but it's saying what's strong, not what's wrong. There's so much stuff to build upon, whereas sometimes community development can be about a conversation about what's wrong with our community. The dog poo and those youngsters on the corner who aren't causing trouble. Whereas the point that we started from with Do It was, what have we got? What interests and passions have we got? Let's see if there's any mileage in bringing people together around that. And lo and behold, over the 5 or 6 years, we've created 12 themed things based on interests. So you go in your rooms and have your chat about identifying the assets and strengths in your communities and your organisations, and how you might unite and mobilise those, and come back and give us some feedback. So another 10 minutes, and then hopefully towards the end we'll have a bit more time for chat and maybe some debate.
Suddenly see everyone coming back. I think is that everybody back, we think? Lovely, that's everyone back from the breakout rooms. I think I know a few people had to leave a little bit early. That's all right. Right, back over to you, Mark.
Okay, yeah, it'd be good to again get some feedback from people about their conversation about the identifying, uniting and mobilising assets in your community, in your organisation. What are you already doing that's working, or what might you do? What ideas have you got around strong themes that are there in your communities in terms of creating new stuff together? Have we got any sharing to present? So Jamie's got his hand up, Jamie Grattan.
Yeah, I was talking in the group, part of Staywell Derby organisation I'm director of. We're putting together a model of a SIN, Social Innovations Network. We're a lived experience organisation, so it's people who've lived experience of mental health and addiction and all that coming together to actually get stakeholders around the table. So individuals have a voice in the services and putting solutions forward to projects and stuff like that. So that's one piece of work we're working on.
Jamie, sorry to interrupt you. Could you just move your hands away from your mouth? Thank you
Sorry.
very much. That's all right. Thank you.
Yeah, so we're setting up the Social Innovations Network model. So we can look at changing people's views of lived experience and individuals who've got really good solutions and good ways forward to a lot of the difficulties within the local community. But we're also trying to use it to change the idea of a proactive approach instead of a reactive. So the idea of the SIN is we'll get individuals, organisations and services and local authority around the table to give everybody a voice within the local community, make things change, instead of local services just saying we're going to do it this way. So that's what we're doing around now.
Great. Any other offers? I was reading, I think I've got this right, Lee was talking about setting up a crafting group based on that particular interest. So that's quite a specific thing. Any other examples of people being mobilised? So Jan Brooks has got a hand up.
Belinda's got a hand up as well, just to let you know. I can see her on the next page, Mark.
Hi. Yes, on the island a few years ago, we identified, or people were telling us that one of the things that they wanted to do, disabled people wanted to do, was to enjoy the sport of cycling, and they couldn't ride regular two-wheel bikes. So we started off by hiring some bikes from the mainland, some adapted bikes, and it was very popular. And from the first session that we held, we now have the island's first para triathlete. She's gone on to become, a sportswoman. So we went out and fundraised and got grants, and we've bought our own bikes now. And what we managed to do before lockdown was train 2 16-year-old boys who were autistic. They were attended one of the sort of special schools over here, and they were given time off to come and train and to deliver the cycling sessions with us. So it started off with just people wanting to to have this opportunity to ride bikes, and it's now developed into being able to support people who want to contribute more by them helping to deliver the cycling sessions themselves, under supervision, obviously. And the skills that people are gaining from that were just tremendous. Not everyone's going to be a para triathlete, but we have people that have gained confidence, and they're going on to do other things. So it was it's been like a snowball effect, really, and far greater impact than we ever thought it would have.
That's a really great example. Thank you, Jan. Who is the other person who had their hand up, Laura, you said?
I saw Belinda had a hand up. Yeah, go ahead, Belinda.
Hi, yeah, we were just talking about our community support group, which we set up in a response to lockdown. So we've got at least one volunteer per street looking after people who needed shopping and prescriptions and all of that. So I've got, I'm from Lyme Regis, and we were selected recently by the Royal College of Art and the Transport Planning Society are doing a big public engagement project. and they selected Lyme as one of the small towns they wanted to run this project in. So I'm actually running it through the community support group as a way to keep all that kind of goodwill and energy and volunteerism going, and also because we're sort of embedded in the community more than the couple of groups that see that as their role. So unfortunately I've been kind of like upsetting, you know, ruffling a few feathers, but I think it's really important because part of the aim of the project is looking at sustainable transport, but it's also looking at how do we do public engagement in a different way. So I just feel like, okay, well, if that's how the Royal College of Art wants to do it, then that's how I'm going to do it. So I'm kind of engaging our community support group, and we've already been talking about how we continue the role of the community support volunteers, and we're working quite closely with a group that started, I mean, it was going to start anyway before the crisis, but has absolutely blossomed during the crisis, which is a garden growers group. So we'd already been talking about how to work more closely with them and develop more community-based initiatives. But yeah, it's just interesting. I'm at the stage now of having annoyed people because they're not doing it and we are. So that's where I am with it. Oh, and we're also working really closely with the our lead social prescriber, who's fantastic, and she's just said, look, anything you guys are doing I think is wonderful and we are fully behind you. So I feel quite sort of justified and supported by that. But yeah, if anyone's got any advice about how to deal with all the brickbats that are coming in my direction, that would be good.
I think Joe has just responded in chat saying ruffling feathers can be an incredibly positive change. So, you know, sometimes it's good.
Definitely, that all sounds great. Was there another hand up? Did I see Gillian Shakespeare, or was that, have I got that wrong?
I can see Liz as well.
Yes. Yes. I'd love to do cycling. I'd love to go, but there's nowhere to cycle around here.
Hi, Gillian.
Hello.
Nice to see you on here. Perhaps we can talk about doing some cycling somewhere locally. I know you, don't I? So
Yeah, I'd love to do it, and there's nowhere to do it around here.
Okay, well,
I see what that was.
Leave it with me then, and we'll have a chat separately. I'll see you on Thursday, maybe at our Zoom.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we'll talk about that. How's that?
Yeah, who am I speaking to?
It's Lucy. Lucy,
I can't see you. I'll just go to active speaker. See.
There you go.
Let's go to active speaker. I can see it now. Yeah.
Yeah. We'll have a chat about it, shall we? Another time.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah? Yes, please. Thanks. I'll just see what that was.
Lovely connections.
Apologies, my battery was about to die. I hadn't plugged it in. And,
no problem, I saw you walk off. I think, did Liz Clark, you put your hand up to give feedback?
Hi, yeah. Just first of all, I want to say how brilliant this meeting's been. I only stumbled across it on Facebook, so good old Facebook advertising, that worked. One of the things that we've kind of morphed into doing as a result of, we set up a COVID support group, so we were supporting isolated households, and I was amazed how many people came forward to join that, and it's now formed as the Nantwich Buddies, and we've been given a grant by our Cheshire East Council to run it for 6 months and develop it in various different ways. One of the ways that we're looking forward to getting started next week is as street ambassadors, and we are dressing up in our high vises and going around the town, helping people. Predominantly it started with helping people because the council in their wisdom decided you had to start paying for car parking, but you could only use contactless. So we discovered that a lot of elderly people and a lot of people that are maybe on low incomes don't actually have debit cards and can't even pay to park because they can't put money in the machine. So we're there to help with alternatives for them and just signpost people around and help make sure they're social distancing and stuff. And we're also, part of the grant also allows us to put on an event. We're planning it for the first week of September. That really kind of just upskills lots and lots of different workshops that people can dip into, much like what you're doing now, but so that we can offer volunteers skills to be a volunteer, or skills just to upskill them to help them with their CV. So we've got people doing mental health first aid, dementia friends training, a bit of Makaton, bit of sign language, basic first aid, all sorts of different things that volunteers can just dip into. So there's lots of people on this chat group, and I'd love to offer you all an opportunity to get involved with that. If you've got a particular skill that you wouldn't mind presenting and sharing with our volunteers, I'd love to have you involved with that in some way. But this is a great little group, so cool. Thank you.
Thank you, Liz. And I can feel a Cycle It project coming on with Lucy and Gillian and co. Are you going to say something, Lucy?
Yeah, I just for me, and I know you, Mark, and you have talked about this, but I think it's such an amazing point, and lots of you are touching on this, is that when you connect people through what they're passionate about, what they love, what they are, what their interests are, then that is their common ground. I get sort of told off quite a lot of the time because I'm really blunt, when I talk about, and don't, there are places for groups for folk who have, I don't know, had a stroke, or there are places for groups of folk that have got a certain, that might be deaf or whatever it might be, I don't know. But also, whilst there is places for that, it's really important to have people connecting through their interests and what they love, and passion. And when you do that, you're going to get all sorts of people from all sorts of walks of life. I often find that, the common ground isn't so great in groups that are created by the issue or the problem or the disability. There isn't that much common ground necessarily, apart from what the issue is, which there is a place for. But it's really nice to hear that people are connecting folk through their interests. I like that a lot.
Great. Okay, we're 15 minutes away from finishing. I've got another couple of slides I wanted to share, which picks up on I suppose our top tips, but maybe hopefully allowing for a little bit of discussion, although we've only got 15 minutes left. So I'm going to share the screen again. Here we go. So if I just jump from this slide. So I wanted you to get a little bit, we're getting feedback anyway through this process to look at what we've learned, what we already do, and that reflects these principles and practices, and you're adding in already things that are important to building more inclusive communities. But I was just trying to rationalise some of our learning. But one of the things I will say is that we've shared with you some tools that you can use: one-page profiles, keys to inclusion, positive and productive meetings. They're all tools that are helpful as part of your toolkit, but what underpins this work, and probably is more important, is the values. So having the values of inclusion and the beliefs that everybody should take part, everybody has assets and strengths, to me is the most important thing, and then you can use the tools to help you. But one of the dangers of tools is sometimes they're templates, and sometimes templates, if you follow them too rigidly, they actually restrict your thinking. One-page profiles is an example, because there's a set of questions you work through, but I've seen people filling in their answers to the questions, and then their profiles all look the same, they look standardized. And so the trick for me is to be creative and flexible. And before I finish, I'll mention some stuff about creativity if I've got time. But in terms of our top tips, we would say apply the keys to inclusion to create the right environment and the right culture. Think about using positive and productive meetings to share out roles and to create equality. Learn more about the whole host of person-centered Teams tools that there are out there. They're just masses of them. Be true to the co-production principles and the process, and I'll quickly go through a slide on that in a minute. There's a tool that we use called Let's Go Co-Pro action planning tool that we use all the time. And asset-based development, community development, is a brilliant way of working with communities. But what we need to remember is it's still too easy to create a dependency culture. So we can still create a culture of dependency on community development specialists, if you like. So the real challenge, I don't know if anybody's heard of the paper called The Enabling State. It talks about key conditions to this work. And one of them is facilitate and get out of the way. Because otherwise you're going to create a dependency on yourself or on me. And we're grappling with this in Do-IT every day. Lucy is challenging me and others to say, hang on, if you disappeared from that, would it carry on? So I think there's a real role in facilitating or being an alongside-er, not doing two, working with, supporting, facilitating. Otherwise, we're going to carry on creating another culture of dependency. So I'm going to just quickly share with you this. This is the Let's Go Co-Pro tool that we use to create all of our projects in Do-IT. It's a one-pager. It's outcome focused. It uses the principles of co-production. It's focused on strengths. It doesn't ignore the challenges and the issues and things that need to change. It focuses on networks, ideas and actions. And we find that if you use that well on a big piece of flip chart paper or whatever in an engaging way and invite the right people in, you can create a project pretty quickly. And then the other thing about co-production is that it isn't consultation. It isn't just engagement. Co-production is it's a set of values. It's about starting with the people, even if that's a small team of people, which is what happened with Do-IT. We literally had 4 or 5 of us trying to get beyond the usual suspects, because there's a challenge sometimes even in the voluntary sector. It's the same old faces. Looking at what we can do, what we know, what we're good at, assets, co-creating a vision together. What do we want to do? Let's aim high. Let's co-design the solutions together. How are we going to do this? And then if people want to, they can get involved in co-delivering. So that example of the cycling group and the 2 autistic guys coming in to know they're going to be delivering that. It's a great example. And then at the end of the process, if there is an end, let's co-evaluate it together. Let's check that it's worked for everybody. So that would be another message from us about being true to co-production. Just in case there may be some other questions and points, but on the creativity thing, lots of people say they're not creative, and I managed to go to a presentation by a couple of toy inventors many years ago, created a book and a process called Inventivity, combining inventing with creating, and it's chock full of exercises to help you to step outside the box. And they said there's a test for creativity, and the test is, were you a child once? And most people should answer yes to that. And when we were children, we were naturally creative and intuitive, and as adults we sometimes lose that. So the job is to go back to being creative and to have really strong values about inclusion, co-production and assets. Are there any other key points that people want to bring in to add to that, or anything from the chat that Lowry or Lucy have seen? I'll stop the share.
One thing that's come up a few times, Mark, was just where people could get their hands on the what did you call it, the one-pager co-pro sheet. Is that just a matter of Googling it, or is there a specific link that? I'm
not sure you will get it, but we've kind of created it, the co-production network for Wales. So if you Google copronet.wales, they're the guys who created that tool. We've slightly adapted it. but I'm happy to share the tool and some of the guidance that's with it. And as Lucy will tell you, we use it all the time.
We use it for absolutely everything. You know, I love it for talking with, just from big ideas to big strategic plans to really small individual projects. It's a really, really, really inclusive, creative tool. Yeah, and you can and everybody can get stuck in. It's round the table job, and yeah, it works well for us.
Another one to drop in is the wedding planner. People heard of that one? From an approach called Just Enough Support, and it asks you to think about creating an event, but you've got no money, and you think about your networks and the resources around you. And myself and Lucy were looking at Lucy's gang are creating a festival on a shoestring. So they're using the wedding planner to get all those ideas in. So that's just another little.
What's really important when you co-produce something is, I tried to explain this to the council meeting the other day. They're having a consultation with the community and saying, hang on a minute, why are you doing that? Co-produce it with the community. Get investment from the community members. Get their ideas before you go out there and tell them what you're doing. You know, it's really important that you get people's input, because they're going to come up with stuff that you haven't even thought of, and your ideas and resources are going to be maximised by who you bring to that table in the first instance. Don't just tell somebody you're going to deliver something to them. Get them involved from the start. The investment from the community will blow your mind if you do that. And it's a challenge, you know, like I said before, you've got to target people and pull people in and get a group that can, you know, who loves hedgehogs? Right, you do. Let's design this hedgehog project, not me design this project for you and then deliver it. There's no ownership or investment from folk. It's just, yeah, it doesn't work that way, I've found. Do it the other way, everybody's involved and everybody wants it to work.
Yeah, it's more likely to sustain because people have got that ownership and it's part of them. So then you've got a chance of getting out the way and letting them get on with what they want to do. It's all easier said than done. We realise that, but we challenge ourselves every day about this stuff. But it's about the doing. That's our message. Get on and do this stuff, and do more of what you're evidently all doing. You've come to this because you're already passionate about communities and inclusion. So just do more of what you're doing, and if you can find any of these little tools or tips helpful, grab them like we've grabbed them over the years and adapt them and use them.
Everybody's asking for the co-pro sheet, Mark. It's hot. Everyone wants this now, so you're gonna have to. Can you do it? Can you put it onto the screen so people can screenshot it? Maybe.
That's a good idea. If you're willing to. Apparently, we've crashed the Co-Production Wales website. Everyone's on there now, and it's kicking everyone off because it's struggling. So we'll try and put these links in the email that we send out.
It's basically the top one there is outcome. The second, you know, what is it that you want to achieve? And then your number 2 is strengths. What have you got already? Number 3 is what needs to change. So it's often that you need to find out what the issue is that you're trying to address. Yeah. So what is the problem? So the solution will be in the problem. Your networks. Who have you got out there already? What resources and assets have you got locally? And then your ideas. That's the generation. My favourite part. Come on, then. Let's get all these ideas on the table. Let's pick out the good ones. Let's vote on them. And then the actions. What will you do from there? And you can use this at every stage. So it can be a review tool. You can use it. It's a really good way of getting people together and thrashing things out and getting projects up and running.
So there you go. So yeah, we hope that's been helpful. I think we've got a couple of minutes left if there are any final thoughts, but the time has really whizzed by. But we're passionate to just share what we've done, and we've got on and done stuff. We're not perfect. We're small. We're still a small organisation. We don't employ staff. We get a bit of income through training, that we put back in into the seed funding. But we love this way of working. I don't understand that people coming up with the barriers about this stuff, because it's such a nice way of working with individuals and communities. What's not to like, as far as I'm concerned? But it comes down to values as much as anything. And so I'm going to quote Funboy 3 and Bananarama again. It ain't what you do, it's the way that you do it. So thank you for having us. Gatherings, yeah, gatherings is a nicer word.
Thanks so much, Mark. And thank you, Lucy, as well, for jumping in. I think everybody would be scribbling down the GoPro sheet as you had that there. That's just been an amazing, feels like it's been properly whistle stopped. You think an hour and a half is a long time. It just goes, doesn't it? So that's been like amazingly useful. I can just tell from the chat that people have really taken quite a lot from that. So thank you so much, you guys. Thank you everyone for joining.
Thank you very much.
Can I just say that if people want to save the Zoom chat, that they click on the file in the bottom right hand corner, file icon, and they should be able to save it to their computer or the cloud or wherever.
Yeah. Lovely, Joe, you got there ahead of me. Thank you.
Sorry,
for that.
I was answering someone else's question in the chat. I'll shut up now, that's fine.
Yeah, no, that's super useful. Yeah, there's sort of three on a computer anyway. There's three little dots. It might be hide. Yeah. Click on that and say save chat. If you're on a phone or another device, it might be somewhere else. You have to find it. I can't remember.
And also, Mark, kudos for the Funboy 3 and Bananarama reference. Yeah. Oh.
You're very wise people.
Until Girls Aloud, Bananarama were the most successful British girl band ever.
Good fact. That's a fact of the day, I think.
Absolutely.
Yeah, just to say, just as we finish up, just to say, we will send some notes around and we'll send a link to the recording probably early next week. But do save the chat if you'd like to as well. We've got some other events coming up. We've got ongoing events constantly. Lucy's busy arranging lots. We've got like 2 or 3 a week most weeks, which I think, bear with me, I'll just grab the link for that. You can find them on our Facebook page.
Sherry, I just popped I popped a few links in earlier. Yeah, perfect. So I put in the link to upcoming events on the Facebook page, our community, which is a Facebook group that you're all invited to, full of lots of like-minded folk, and the last link is just a quick survey. It'd be really, really helpful if you could fill it in. It takes 2 minutes, and it's kind of our only way to evaluate what we're doing at the moment and learn from it. So yes, thank you.
Brilliant. But I think that's it for now. So thank you so much, everyone, for joining, and hope to see you.
Yes, I was a bit late. I was trying to get on.
Not a problem at all. Hope you got the most out of it. Thanks, everybody.
Lovely. Thanks very much. Yes, thanks. Yeah.
Bye.
Thanks, Lucy.
Bye.